The death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE marked the beginning of the Hellenistic period, a transformative era that lasted until 30 BCE with the rise of the Roman Empire. To understand the cultural and intellectual world of this period, it is essential first to examine the political conditions that emerged after Alexander's death. When Alexander died unexpectedly at age 33, he left behind a vast empire stretching from Greece to the borders of India. But his only legitimate heir was too young to rule, and no single general possessed the authority or prestige necessary to hold the empire together. Almost immediately, Alexander's commanders, known as the Diadochi, fell into a fierce struggle for control. As a result, the empire fragmented into three major Hellenistic kingdoms, along with numerous smaller semi-independent states, including many Greek polis. Although some city-states retained formal independence, most found themselves increasingly drawn into the orbit of one or more of these powerful successor kingdoms. The first of the great Hellenistic states to emerge was Ptolemaic Egypt, ruled by the descendants of Ptolemy, one of Alexander's most trusted generals. This kingdom included Egypt, part of Arabia, Palestine, and the island of Cyprus. The Ptolemies inherited the enormous bureaucratic apparatus of the ancient pharaonic state, as well as the long-standing tradition of divine kingship. Combined with Egypt's abundant agricultural wealth, this made the Ptolemies the richest of Alexander's successors. A second major state was the Seleucid kingdom, founded by the general Seleucus. This empire controlled much of the former Persian Empire, including Asia Minor, Syria, Mesopotamia, and Iran. Its borders shifted frequently, and it was the most culturally diverse of the successor states. Governing such an expansive realm demanded a strong, centralized bureaucracy and a formidable standing army. Only firm, often authoritarian, leadership could maintain control over the empire's vast and varied territories. The third major kingdom was the Antigonid Kingdom, which included Macedonia and parts of northern Greece. It eventually stabilized under the leadership of Antigonus I Monophthalmus, known as the One-Eyed. Though smaller and poorer than the Ptolemaic or Seleucid realms, it was the most thoroughly Greek in population and culture. Despite its limited resources, the Antigonid Kingdom was frequently the most unified and militarily effective of the three, at least until the early 200s BCE. Even as these powerful monarchies dominated the Hellenistic world, many smaller states managed to survive by carefully maneuvering within the shifting political landscape. Athens, Sparta, Rhodes, and numerous rising cities in Asia Minor preserved degrees of autonomy through strategic alliances, by forming regional leagues, and by exploiting rivalries among the larger kingdoms. Militarily, the Hellenistic world retained the structure and traditions of earlier Greek warfare. Armies continued to be drawn largely from local Greek populations, while substantial numbers of Greek mercenaries were hired throughout the region. These mercenaries often commanded high wages, negotiated favorable terms, and sometimes even determined the outcome of conflicts simply by switching sides when bribed. The armies themselves followed the Macedonian model established by Philip II and Alexander. They featured enormous phalanxes of up to 30,000 infantry armed with long pikes, sarissas, supported by 2,000 or more cavalry and soldiers, wearing lighter armor than in classical Greece. Unlike the earlier Greek polis, the Hellenistic states were absolute monarchies. The king's authority was hereditary, and he embodied the state itself. There was no distinction between ruler and government. A vast bureaucracy supported the monarch, giving him unprecedented control over his kingdom. This political structure differed sharply from the classical Greek basileus, whose power had been limited by councils and assemblies. In the Hellenistic kingdoms, kings ruled with far fewer restraints. It is crucial to note that although the royal families of these kingdoms were Greek, the majority of their populations were not. Greeks, or locals who had adopted the Greek language and Greek cultural norms, formed a ruling elite, while native peoples constituted the bulk of the population. By the mid-200s BCE, much of the eastern Mediterranean had become deeply Hellenized, culturally Greek, despite remaining politically divided among multiple kingdoms.